What's going on, beautiful people? Welcome back to another episode of Mind to Motions. I am Theo.
And I'm Hali.
And today we're going to be getting into the topic of loneliness. So, kicking this straight off before I shoot this over to you, Hali.
Yeah.
I know that this is actually a really common problem that a lot of people deal with, but it's also something that is actually quite current.
Yeah, definitely.
As well, because I think with the advent of social media and how everything is so quick, so accessible, and then the perception is that we are all connected and everyone has just a large group of friends and everyone just like goes out all the time.
Yeah.
And, you know, in some cases, yes, but for the majority, I think there are a lot of people out there that maybe feel more connected digitally, but physically and in the real world, I think that they're kind of lacking. So like, what are your initial thoughts on like loneliness in the market and current today and how it relates to mental health?
Yeah, I feel like you've already touched base on it. So like you said, it's the perception. Mm-hmm. As you mentioned, like right now, the world that we live in, like you said, it's so easy to just like be a completely different person to what you really are deep down, like inside. So inside of us somewhere, whether we've uncovered it or not, I feel like we are our genuine self. We are the person who we really are inside. And some people are lucky enough to have who like are more in connection with that, so they understand themselves like internally very well, and so they're able to, because of that understanding of that, they're able to then share that and so sort of show at least some aspects of it outside externally as well. But unfortunately for many of us, we don't really know who we are. And so because we don't know who we are, we tend to give off not like on purposely as well, but just naturally tend to give off a sort of hidden version of ourselves. And I think when you tend to do that, then obviously you because you're not sharing your authentic self to someone, you can't really connect. And I think with that connection then begins to build sort of an inadequate or loss of sort of like real connection with real people. So with that being said, I feel like that is what sort of like, to me, builds that sense of loneliness. Because when you fail to build that sort of closeness or that really close relationship and allow yourself to really like take up space in someone's life and allow someone to take up space for you and like save space for you for any problems that you may have, or you as a person just being there for you, that's when you start to open up and really be yourself, and then there's not like, you're not really hiding. But when there's that inadequateness or loss of connection, that's when you start to feel the loneliness, because it feels like something is missing. And to me, that's what loneliness is. It's very hard to try and explain. It's one of those, like you said, it doesn't really have a definition if you really think of it. I think when people think of loneliness, or at least for me, I think of like a loss of connection. I feel like it's something that's missing. Like I know that in the times, like in the past for me, when I've felt lonely, it's always felt like, I don't know if any of you guys have also felt this, but it's always felt like something is not right. There's an imbalance, or there's something I'm missing, and I don't know what it is. And a lot of the times when I then not resolve it, but when it gets better, sort of the loneliness feeling gets better from being lonely, it's because I tend to tune in back into who I really am, and that lets me like clarify what's important to me, what I value, who values me, and who's allowing that space for me to like sit comfortably in. And so that's my sort of perspective on loneliness. It's like a loss of something, and not a lot of the times you don't know what it is. You just feel disconnected. To me, that's how I see it. How about you?
Yeah, no, I mean, just to add on to that, I mean, I definitely agree in terms of the loss of connection, because for me it kind of comes across as it's like a lack of connection to self, essentially. Because you'll hear certain people that are able to thrive independently. They're able to thrive on their own, and they're much more comfortable. Or they at least say that they're much more comfortable being alone and being able to operate independently. However, you've got others that maybe put out an image that they're doing okay, but in reality they may be lacking some of those physical connections with real people. So I think that the reason why we're experiencing so many mental health issues today is because, one, they are labelled as just mental health. It's just one big category of a problem that you have, whereas in reality it's actually multiple problems, and you may only have one, two, or multiple of them. You know, so when I think about loneliness, typically what I think of is, especially in today's society, is that the more digital it's become, the more it replaces the physical. And I think mental strength, let's say, or mental wellness comes from a connection and an understanding who you are in terms of self, but then being able to translate that with other people when you go and sit down and talk. So I think you need both in order to have a healthy balance. And I think now what's happened is we've replaced a lot of the physical things and the connections we had with people with just a digital version of it. So for example, me and you could have done this virtually, right? We could have just said, we'll just jump on Zoom, you record your bit, I record my bit.
Instagram.
And we'll Instagram live, which I've done before, Instagram lives. And, you know, it can be good because, you know, some parts of the world you maybe can't visit and travel and see each other. So for far distances, long distances, I actually think it's really beneficial.
Definitely, because it bridges that connection.
It bridges a gap, even if it's just education and knowledge. However, when you're local, I think it's really dangerous to have a large social group of people you don't see, especially if they're local. So for example, we're here in Slough. I go out and I'm at the gym. You know, I've got football with the casual ballers, and then I'll come and do this project with yourself. As well as doing my own personal things on the sideline, I'm constantly going out and meeting people. And as a photographer, I can't really afford to be too quiet and too indoors, because you have to put your name out there. You know, I don't work for a company per se that's going to promote me as an artist or creative. So I think what's happened today, you know, full circle in that, is essentially, I think that loneliness is a lack of or loss of connection to self. And it's essentially where you're trying to figure out like what makes you tick, what works for you, and meanwhile trying to operate and maneuver in your environment. So what I think is a big problem now is because I think less people are doing this, which is sitting down and conversing, sharing ideas, concepts, and then what happens is it's just like a muscle, right? Like if anyone who goes to the gym or works out or has a sport that they do, you have certain muscles that you have to constantly train. You have to consistently put under pressure so that they improve. And I think what's happened is it's become easier for us to just sit back online and just share.
One click of a button.
One click, one share, one post, and then also to get rid of it as well. So I think now we have a harder time of going out and drawing those connections with people in the real world, if that makes sense. So anything as little as simple interactions on the street, selling yourself, marketing yourself, or even just sharing ideas has become a little bit more difficult. And this is why everyone points fingers now at things online and says, I don't believe that, that's fake, that's lies, false news. It's because you don't have
filters.
You don't have the validation. You know what I mean? So like, that's one thing I definitely think. Like, what's your thoughts on how it's affected, you know, females in particular, from a female perspective?
I think it's a little bit of that. Like, it's I'm trying to think, like, females in particular, I think it's that sort of like, it's definitely like related to digital media, I think, personally. Like you said, I personally think, I don't know if this is like real, I don't know if anyone has done the statistics around this, but I feel like with the digital media that we have right now in this current age, I feel like a lot of people online, particularly female, are not always the representative of who they really are outside of social media and digital media.
So there's men too as well.
Exactly, so there's a lot of women out there, you know, they would say they work out but they got BBL, and I'm not like, you know, putting those people out there, like, it's if that's you, but I feel like the importance is not portraying something that you're clearly not. And I think that's where the fine line like lies. Because the moment that we start to do that, which is happening right now, you know, people are completely different for who they are. So then, like you said, Theo, you mentioned a little bit that there's that distrust, dishonesty, and when there's a dishonesty and distrust and you don't know who's telling the truth, who's being the honest self, who's fake online, when you don't know that and there's that sort of like discrepancy, naturally we're going to feel disconnected from people, and we don't know what to believe. And when there isn't that trust, you're not going to feel free, or like you're not going to feel encouraged to share who you are. So then you're going to naturally start to hide yourself as well as a female, or who you are. And so there's this really like weird void of people just not trusting each other, not being able to be open and just share stuff. And it's like, even though we talk about this, like, you know, feminism and really like, you know, women uniting, you know, because you know, that still exists, you know, there's still major inequalities between men and women. But I feel like the digital media, although there's like positives to that, there's been some major downfalls, which has allowed women to become disconnected, because there are certain individuals or some people, or maybe all of us, we're all a little bit guilty of like not portraying the ultimate self, our real self, on digital media. You know, I'm guilty as well. Like, I don't always post myself on social media where I'm just like sat maybe just like looking rough and messy. You know, most of my pictures I've got makeup on. That's not my real self, really and truly. So
you want to promote
so you want to promote some like a well-rounded of who we really are in everyday lives. The more that we do that, the better we can like build trust amongst each other, the better that we can sort of like be open and free and connect with others, which will eliminate in the long run that loneliness. Otherwise it's just going to be a lot of distrust and a lot of just like people just hiding their true selves, and with that there's just going to be a disattachment. Eventually you start to lose yourself, and that's what happens. You start to lose yourself, and like you said, like loneliness to you, like even to me as well, it's like when you disconnect from your true self. So then once you start to do that, then, you know, you start to build this loneliness where you feel like you have kind of lost yourself, and there isn't space for you to even try and be yourself. So yeah, I feel like for females it's probably a little bit like that, where we just don't have this sort of like a trust. So we're kind of like losing that sort of like female connectedness, or like, you know, that sort of like empowerment that we had like as like a community. I think that's slowly being diminished by that lack of trust amongst us females now on digital media. So I would say that. From a male's perspective, what would you say?
Well, I would say that from what I've seen, the world itself, I think what we're finding is becoming a lot more compartmentalized. So when I say that, I mean, it's like you mentioned about women feeling a lack of trust in systems. I think what happens is almost there's a few areas that you can kind of come at it, and one thing that you brought up and mentioned was about the aspect of loneliness, and you know, you're wanting to wear makeup or promote or present a good image of yourself. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with enhancing your image. I think that's where the issues are starting to become apparent, and me coming from the artistic creative world where that is the goal. You're essentially manipulating nature around you and your environment in order to create an image, to tell a story, to sell some artwork. So I think that from the men's perspective of how I think things are being affected in terms of loneliness, I think men are expected to be men, aka when we say that, we're talking about confident, assertive, knows what he wants, willing to actually go after it, and then worthy of being a leader, if you will, because a leader is essentially somebody who can put forth ideas, concepts, and then translate them to a group. It doesn't necessarily have to be this, you know, type A characteristic that everyone says that leadership is. I think that a lot of the times you can lead by example. Definitely. You can lead by your character, and you can be equally as successful at that. Whereas I think what we're doing now is that we've got lost a little bit in between that enhancement of our image, especially online. So in the female's perspective, like you just mentioned, it may be wanting to wear makeup, present a certain image and look, enhancing or changing your body. That's now become a thing. So whereas with men, it's more physical, working out in the gym, acquiring items that essentially, boost your assets or boost your financial level, your perceived financial level. So I think it's somewhere in between that enhancement of the image. We've kind of become destabilized, and I think there needs to be more conversation based in and around like these things we're talking about now, like women feeling comfortable. Like, I don't necessarily think it's wrong. My personal decision belief is that it's not wrong to enhance your image.
Definitely,
or to want to put forth the best image when you sell yourself. So I wouldn't call that fake. I'd call that an enhancement. However, I think because we're seeing less and less physical connections of people, it's harder to validate that. Like, it's harder for me. Like, we can sit down here and I can convince you of like who I am, because you get to see me in the flesh. And then you can question me, like, oh, what's your thoughts about that? And then you will go away with a more rounded picture.
Compared to someone that you
was just talking to online for
or you just 6
see a picture
weeks. Of. And
that happens a lot now. What happens is we have, it used to be just pen pals, where you connected, didn't really know that person, but maybe down the line in the future you'd meet up. But the goal was always to meet up. It's never been to have this long distance communication with people, and you never actually go and meet them in the real world. So I'd say for men, I think their struggles are based in and around consistently knowing that they have to produce, that they have to showcase an image that looks like worthy of leadership. It looks worthy of people working with you, working for you. And
so do you think it's like that sort of like pressure on men to like be a certain way, to be like labeled, respected as someone like a leader?
Yes, I think so. And I think particularly what men tend to do, they tend to create a lot more issues inside their head when they feel like the market doesn't respect them in terms of who they are. And that can be different things, socially, financially, relationships, emotional. I think that when men feel like the market isn't receiving them and responding to the work they put in very well, that's when they start to internalize issues. Whereas as you're kind of mentioning with females, it's a lot more based on how the outside world may perceive me for wanting to enhance myself. Wear makeup, wear certain fashion items. Do you know what I mean?
It's all about like how you're perceived, I think, as a woman, how you're seen publicly. So I kind of think that that's kind of where we're at now, in the case of we're all committed and know that online isn't going anywhere. So it's not like all these social media apps are going to die overnight. Definitely not, no.
However, I think that what we can do is that we can practice communication in the real world a little bit more effectively, because I think what we're trying to do is like convince ourselves we can do without meeting up like this. We could just get away with doing this digitally.
But do you think that's the only reason? Do you think that's the only reason why there's that disconnect, because there isn't that connection in the real world? Or do you think there's something different that can also be done digitally as well that could improve that sort of like connection and sort of like more authentic communication and interaction between each other online as well?
I definitely think that it can be improved in some areas, but my thing is that I'm a naturalist. I'm a realist. So I like to create with tangible things. I like to know that what I did, I can see the result of it at the end, so I can put my hands on it, know that I've manipulated it with my hands and created something, and then I can share that with people. Whereas I think with today, and that's why I still really respect technology. I really enjoy the new tech that we have today. But people have replaced their regular life with their technological digital life, and as opposed to it enhancing your life.
I get what you mean.
I've always told people you need to know who you are first before you go online.
Absolutely.
Because what people do is they create their image online of who they are, then they get lost in that image.
Yeah.
Whereas I came to technology and the digital space, if you will, knowing quite clearly what my morals are, what my values are, what I'll say yes and no to. And that was very important because I was able to come into the space and analyze and not get upset when I don't hit a viral video. You know,
because at the end of the day, you're more connected to who you are inside.
Exactly.
So regardless of like what the outcomes may be, whether it's like a lot of views or 0 views, you've done what makes you happy.
That's right.
So that's the only thing that matters. But if you've done something or produced something that's completely disconnected from who you are the person, but just so in order to get the views or whatnot, if those views don't come, then you're going to be disappointed because you've done that thing so you can receive a certain sort of like, you know, outcome.
And the validation from the market too. And I can imagine for females you can see similar. Like with men, they're a little bit more quiet and reserved about it. So they'll try to be more cool and a bit more like relaxed. Like, I'm just a guy just doing this, doing that. When in reality, they're probably struggling with some things, whether it's financial, whether it's how they feel physically, whether it's how they feel mentally. And I think these are all combinations of your character. And they're all character building. Back in the, you know, when I was younger, growing up, I remember being constantly thrown into community groups. It was almost like parents understood I can do so much with my kids at home. But they need their friends groups. They need people outside. They need teachers. They need other people that they're going to take reference from to learn about the world. So, you know, we talked about this before we jumped on here, like going to Montham Leisure Centre. Shout out to Montham.
Shout out to Montham.
It's all dead and gone now. Pretty much. It's pretty much.
It actually is like physically dead.
It's done. It's done. Last bit we got is a little ice arena that's still there. It's a memory.
Now that's hanging as well by the thread.
They did redo it, but it's like it's not used like it used to be. It's not used. Most of the community things that we have are not used like they used to be. We used to have church fetes, we used to have festivals, we used to have you know,
carnival,
youth
summer
clubs,
fairs,
carnival, summer fairs,
summer programs,
day parties out, you know, at different venues and things like that, Upton Park. So you definitely think I can see how things have gone and been replaced by digital versions of them. Now we've got Club Room. So people would, instead of going youth club, we'll just jump on a club room.
Is it Clubhouse? Club something.
Clubhouse.
Clubhouse.
That's the one. See, I don't even know because
I've just heard of it.
I've heard of it, and I've seen people jump on it. It could be good. It could be. It's another room. It's another space to talk about things. But
that shouldn't replace.
And it is.
It should just be used to enhance, like you said.
That's it. And then people less likely to get out of bed and go and talk with each other. So I think it's a connection thing. It's like we bring this all back to the beginning, like you talked about, and obviously I, you know, added to. It begins with a loss of connection to self, and that self, you won't find who that person is in terms of who you are if you're constantly searching and living vicariously through others online. That's the problem. You need to identify and recognize what you like, what things motivate you, what things pull you away and make you feel less likely to want to be involved in, and be okay in knowing what those things are, as opposed to I'll just go in with the flow because my favourite person online said it's cool, or my favourite influencer likes that, so I guess I have to like that. Or
they looked really happy doing that, so I'm going to go ahead and do it too because I'll be happy to. And then you do it and you're just like, it's not you, because there's a disconnection between who you really are and what you really like, and you've just not explored yourself and what you like.
That's it.
So absolutely.
So you got those guys online that will motivate, you got those guys online that will persuade, you got those guys online that will like inform and educate. You know, that's kind of where the lines get separated. So but the danger is somebody who's trying to motivate you and persuade you, those are really closely tied. So motivation, like the self-help speakers, the guys who have been through things and they're trying to tell you a story of how you could avoid this to improve your life, it's very different from somebody using a persuasive story to try and get you to buy into something, whether that's financially, time, whatever. And those two are very cleverly now joined. So it's like I can motivate and persuade you at the same time.
That's what they've joined up, and like now the word influence, and that means so many different things. And like you said, it's
is it a good thing? is influence good?
I see. When I think about influence, and I think I've mentioned this before in previous podcasts. I think that whenever I think of the word influence, I don't see it as what we have in social media. When I think of influence, I always think what I see is someone that sort of empowers you. I always see it as a physical person as well. For some reason, I don't ever see it as like anything on digital. I see it more like a standing like mentor. You know, I go to old school kind of, and I see it. Yeah, I see it literally as a mentor who influences you to make positive changes. And
I like that.
I just don't see that enough on social media, to be honest. So that's why whenever I see this social media, is the first thing that rings a bell to me is what you've just said. I see it as I think they should be called persuaders instead of influencers.
And that was what I was just like. Nah, real talk. You know what? It triggered something in my mind. It made me think that when I hear the word influence, I think the reason why I've always felt a bit uncomfortable about it is because, first of all, two reasons. One, I feel like it's a bit of a cop out. Because it allows you, in order to not actually declare certain things that you're good at, and you can just kind of get away with saying I influence. That's one. The second is when I think of the word influence, I think of, unfortunately, more of the negative things. I don't necessarily think of somebody influenced me to do something positive. If I think of somebody's done something positive, they've either taught, motivated, or educated. Or informed, but they don't typically influence. I think of influence as people who have power in order to change certain things. However, I'm thinking of negative influences. That's just what comes to my mind immediately, because when you've got the power to influence, you could influence somebody away from doing something positive. You can influence somebody to go and buy this product instead of this product. You know, like for me, it seems more of a power move in terms of influence. It's like you're socially powerful, and now you can convince these people. I think
because that's what it's become, isn't it? That's what the word has become now.
No, it's not like social promoter. It's not like social engager.
It's not.
It's influence for a reason, and I think all you have to do, like, well, a little bit of quick recreational activity or advice to give to people. If you ever want to find out the genuine nature of somebody, particularly influencers, just ask them what they influence.
That's true, because a lot of them won't know what it is.
And that's it. Like,
a lot of them
that's why I've never labelled myself like an influencer of any kind. People may throw that attachment on me one day, who knows, I don't know, but for me, I don't want to be labelled as an influencer, because I want to be labelled as something that actually can be recognised. Influence is just influence, but what are you influencing? And that's the problem. If you're able to step away from saying I influence this, I'm just an influencer, then it's a bit vague, and then it's a bit like, well, you can kind of just be moved and pushed and pulled regardless. I think it should be more based in and around what your core passions are. So if you are an influencer, cool. But that should be, I think, something that others label on you, as opposed to you calling yourself.
Definitely.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you influence me to do this. You're an influencer, in a sense, as opposed to me walking around calling myself, I am a social influencer. Absolutely. I agree. And that's why I always go back to like the more traditional sense of influencing, and that's why I think of that. And it completely, like, there's a bit of confusion for me when I see influencers call themselves influencers, like on social media and digital media, because it just, to me, the words don't pair up. Like, it doesn't relate to what now we call influencers, and because of that, it's because of that reason. No, 100%. I mean, we'll have to come back to that and revisit that point, because I feel like we could go a little bit deeper into with like that whole category.
Absolutely.
But I mean, that definitely relates to loneliness in general, because I think it's another factor that just pushes people away from a reality. So more vague terms.
I would argue say that it's like the biggest factor right now in our social
it's the biggest buzzword
right now that pushes people away from our ultimate reality. It's the media.
That's it. And it's just like we love falling into these trendy buzzwords now, that we use consistency. We like using like just trendy words that, you know, they do have meaning, but they get watered down when the masses tend to use them, because it's a nice way of throwing everything into one box. You know, one shoe fits all. And I think that's not the case, and I think that's where the mental health stuff develops, because when you just say it's just this, there's so many other things underneath that it actually is. So the people that identify with those things will sit back and say, oh, I don't feel valued, I don't feel respected, I don't feel, you know, like I'm actually a valuable asset in the industry that I work in. I just feel like I'm just being kind of used and pulled and pushed, depending on what's trendy or not. So kind of tying that all off, I would say that overall my whole view and points on loneliness are that it's definitely you know, that lack of connection to self, like we talked about earlier, but I think it's also getting out into the real world and understanding how you can actually affect and maneuver and, you know, bring something positive to it. So finding out what your value is in the marketplace, what your skill sets are, and recognizing the ones that you're not good at as well. You know, like I'm getting to that point where I realize certain things I don't need to worry about, because it's not my forte, I'm not passionate about it. But the things I am passionate about, I really need to be organized in my approach. I need to have a structure, I need to have a routine, I need to know the right people I'm working with to help push that in the right direction. So that's kind of the advice I would give to people out there that maybe are dealing with the ideas of feeling lonely. Step away maybe from just sharing online and reach out to close people, close friends, meet up, go for coffee, go for drinks, do things that don't necessarily involve you having to share the moments online.
Absolutely.
You know? And if you are going to share them, you know, just think carefully about what you're actually telling people.
I would absolutely agree. I'll ask you this one question just to like as the final question before we end things, is like, it might be a bit personal, but have you ever been lonely? And if you have, like, what did it take for you to come out of that state of loneliness? Yes,
definitely. I would say the first real time of feeling like a sense of loneliness was when I went to university, and it was because it was a bit of a culture shock, of course, as you can imagine. I went abroad, went to university in America, so it was, I'd say that the aspects of feeling lonely was attributed to it makes sense, you know, when you're in a foreign country. Obviously I have family in America, so like I'm a bit more comfortable there than other places, but you're still not around where you grew up.
It's not home.
It's not home per se, day to day. So there's certain things you got to learn, you got to adjust to. Then just fitting in, which you're not really going to fit in. Especially myself as a black British expat going over to America to study. It's like, how many of those are there? You know.
Definitely.
So in terms of loneliness, absolutely. I mean, if you're a young black individual, man or woman, the likelihood is you're gonna experience some loneliness. I would even add minorities into that as well too, other minorities. Because when you are the statistical minority, loneliness is pretty much something you're gonna have to come to terms with at some point.
At some point in your life,
you're not gonna be the majority in most rooms that you're in or environments. So for me, I definitely experienced it when I was at university, and the way that I managed to overcome and come out of it was through character. Was through recognizing that my ability, and this is part of the reason why I do what I do now, which is tell stories, podcast, communicate, because my skill is being able to bridge conversations, bridge gaps. So I can meet somebody I don't necessarily know, find some likeness, and then share a conversation with that person, even if it's just sharing time. And I think for me, it was all about kind of just getting out there, recognizing that yes, I may be different, we're lonely, but there are a lot more similarities in us than there are differences. And when you start to realize that, you can have a conversation with anybody, you can share with anyone. So that would kind of be my answer. Is, you know.
That's interesting. No, that's really that makes sense. And you're right in terms of like everyone. I think obviously, moreover. In minorities, definitely you will definitely experience that at some point in your life. But even just everyone in general, because I feel like coming into terms and understanding who you are and what you're about, what your passions are, is a journey. And there's no one in this world who can just stand here and be like, I know exactly who I am. You can say I mostly know who I am, but you don't know exactly who you are. It's a learning process, and you come to develop and uncover new things every single day about yourself that you didn't know before. So I think it's about taking that time to really getting to know yourself, like on that aspect. So because of that, and because nobody really knows who exactly they are, everybody will and must have, even if they didn't know, has experienced loneliness. In some way or another. For me, to answer that question that I asked you, I definitely have experienced loneliness, but with me I feel like it happened in a different kind of way. So it might be interesting to share this perspective. Is that please. For me it happened in, so I was going through a very tough time. I was dealing with like just a lot of under stresses. And I think it was because, again, I wasn't living my life through how I wanted to live, but it was sort of to just like to satisfy everybody else's needs. And I was just acknowledging what I needed to be happy and to be well as well. So I was putting so much effort in trying to people please. That's what I was doing. So even though I was surrounded with family and friends, great family, great friends, supportive, everything that you can ask for, I just felt a little disconnected because I wasn't giving myself the self-care that I needed. So eventually I just got bogged down and got really overwhelmed because I wasn't taking care of myself. And then that led me to being in a state of just like enclosure. I was just like in this dark room, and because I hadn't paid, I wasn't giving myself that nurturing, that watering that I needed to grow. I kind of like just stayed there. I just didn't move. I was static, and I wasn't growing because I was too busy watering other people's plants. And for me, that's how it was like. So what I'm trying to say is that loneliness is not always like in Theo's case, whereas like it was sort of like externally, I guess, like moving away, and it was a new environment, and he was like the minority, and everything else was maybe a bit different to what he was used to, and his like environment. For me, it was like I was in the same environment, everything, I was surrounded by people, but it was I guess the decisions that I made that kind of like led to the feeling of loneliness. So I think it's interesting to see like how different perspectives like come into play. That you don't have to necessarily be affected by loneliness externally. You can have everything you want, and externally you might look shiny, brand new and happy, but it doesn't mean that you are inside. That's true. So I think that's the important aspect that we've both been sharing, is that you really need to people, like the best advice is try and steer away, or like maybe prevent loneliness, is really getting to know who you really are. And despite what others say, or what others might perceive you, or the fear that you might have in how others might perceive you, you have to just fight against that and sort of just be like, no, like I need to nurture myself, I need to understand me before I can help anyone else or like add to someone else's life. I think you need to understand yourself first, like Theo said. You really, it's just important to really like get to know you first, and how you can influence the world and for the better, and other people as well. I think that the best way to try and like influence the world and other people is by knowing who you truly are, or at least getting halfway there, or like learning, going through that, exactly, going on that path.
100%.
So that's
I like that. I like that. There's not really too much to add to that, if I'm being honest. We both obviously given our perspectives on, our personal views. We could always revisit this topic as well. I think, because, a lot of these talking points are, and even in general, this conversation, when we're talking about mental health and the awareness of it, there's no real black and white answers.
Definitely.
Because each person is uniquely different. We're giving our perspectives, and obviously there'll be people out there that resonate with my way of thinking, and people resonate with yours, vice versa. And I just think that there needs to be a lot more spaces like this, where there's a healthy dialogue, where people can come and actually get some informed information from the actual horse's mouth, as opposed to kind of we're echoing things that we've heard online. We're echoing statements or things like that. That helps, but I think it's important to recognise, because each person is going to be uniquely different. So
absolutely.
Overall, if you are suffering from any loneliness out there, guys, I would want to take some of these points on board. Definitely sharing in the flesh with real people that you trust and you're close to, and finding out certain small things, like start from the beginning and work your way up. Find out kind of who you are as an individual, what you're passionate about, things that you enjoy, what makes you happy, and then you can try to look to share that with others, and then maybe you look online for resources. So there's a layered approach that I think you can take to it, but it needs to start from, like Hali said, it needs to start from self, and then work your way outward from there. You know?
Yeah, I agree.
So without further ado, guys, I hope that you guys have enjoyed this episode. We're just here continuing to break down just more things in the mental health world. This is all about mental health and wellness, and yeah, I think it's if it can help even just one person out there,
definitely,
to have like trigger their mind. Oh yeah, I didn't think of it that way, and it can help their life on their day to day. Then we're happy. It's all about helping and providing that support to others out there. So
definitely,
hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, share this with anyone who maybe is dealing with any mental health issues, and if you are suffering, as I said, from that loneliness, have a look around your close circle and see who might be able to help bring that out, and have to start from self. The last thing that I would kind of throw in there. Anything else you want to throw in there, Hali?
No, I think that's pretty much it. So like Theo said, this platform is to just like share our sort of like personal views, and I think that's why it's so important, because we're not just like throwing out facts and figures, because we can easily be sat here today and just be talking about stats and facts and definitions, proper definitions, but it's not. Sometimes subjects like these and matters like these can't really be justified in one sentence. It takes a lot more than that. It's like real life experiences, and that really, I think, is what adds meat to the topic and issues that people experience every day, especially about mental health and health. So if this like has helped you, like Theo said, like share this with someone that you think might take something out of it too. And we just look forward to sharing more stuff like this in future episodes. So absolutely. But
guys, wherever you are and hearing this message, I hope you guys are having a really positive day, and it continues to improve. And till the next episode, I am Theo,
and I'm Hali,
and we will see you guys soon. Peace and love.
Bye.